Hello and welcome to Offsite Dirt. As many of our audience members know, we love talking about Passive House. And today we have Ken Levenson from the Passive House Network. He's actually in New York right now and was just recently in Colorado. So we're going to get the latest, we're going to get the updates, we're going to find out about this network, and we're also going to find out, a little bit more about a story that we talked about, the Icebox Challenge in Colorado. He's going to kind of give us a little bit of an overview and talk a little bit more thoroughly about Passive House and why these principles are so active and so acknowledged now. So, hey, Ken, it's so nice to have you here today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Audrey. Happy to do
So,
it.
I love it. And so, if you wouldn't mind, can you give us a little bit of your background? I know you are an architect and now you're kind of leading the efforts into this whole new dimension of building. So, I'd love to kind of start there.
Yeah, absolutely. One of many, many leaders. It's great. It's such a wonderful community, and I really feel like it's driven by the peer-to-peer knowledge sharing and everybody supporting each other. It's kind of a special place in terms of people being open and giving and learning from each other. So, and I was happy to discover it and feel honored to be part of helping make it grow. Yeah, so I'm an architect by background and practiced for a couple of decades in New York City. Did all sorts of projects, but really got into brownstone renovations and retrofits of older buildings. Was struggling with figuring out how to make a difference and make it know that I was making a positive difference in terms of sustainability. And one day I discovered Passive House online, and it was like, the proverbial light bulb going off. And it was like, wow, here is a methodology that gives you a clear pathway. It's predictable. The results you can count on as long as you're following along and doing it. And so I signed up for the first class that I could, and I was very fortunate to have some clients that I was starting a project with be willing to take on the adventure of doing a passive house. And it was really interesting because I came out at it sort of out of climate panic, in saying, we really need to smash carbon emissions, and be as efficient as we can. And in speaking with the client, it was apparent that, sure, they like sustainability, but that wasn't a driving motivation in thinking about renovating their home. What they cared about was comfort. What they cared about was the health of their kids. They cared about resiliency. And, it was really kind of a revelation to be able to have those conversations and talk about Passive House in ways that were meaningful to them and not necessarily carry my agenda with me, and realize the versatility of Passive House in that way. And so from that time, and the project was quite successful, I'm happy to say. And from that time, it was off to the races. Was able to do a few more projects, but then really felt like there was so much to do and so much more than just project by project. And how do we help grow? Because at that time, there were really very few. This was 2010. Very few projects happening. So I helped start New York Passive House as an organization. I was on the initial board of the Passive House Alliance, and started company 475 High Performance Building Supply, with a couple of partners, and Flores is there leading the charge today, which has been great to see that company grow. And really we developed it as, you know selling products, yes, but it was about through education, and it was about better building. It was about more ecological building, high performance passive house building, and bringing all the parts together. um, and really out of that and the work with New York Passive House, and then helping found the North American Passive House Network, what became the Passive House Network, I kind of shifted further, then stepped back from 475 and was able to do that, and took on the role of being executive director of the Passive House Network a little over 3 years ago, and had been working at this now since then, and really excited about, just growing the community, the education. And as we were saying, as we were getting ready to come on, it's an exciting moment. It feels like things are starting to click and shift. So it's been a
Agreed.
bit of a haul from the beginning, but it's good.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on so many lovely points about Passive House and people not really understanding it. And I think the comfort for people to choose comfort, for people to choose a building method of construction, and then you having this architectural desire to do that. You've really come such an amazing way and such a long journey to be now this amazing advocate and executive director of this network. So, in your opinion, Ken, over the last 3 years that you've been involved, how has the network grown and what is the purpose of this network?
Yeah, so the network it's a nonprofit. It's nationally focused. So we work with um membership, and we have some regional chapters across the country. But we also work with independent passive house groups, and we're affiliated with the International Passive House Association. And it was one of the things that really drew me to passive house as well from the beginning, that from where I was coming from in my climate panic, it was about a global problem that required global solutions, and to find a global community that was really pushing things forward and learning from each other from around the world was super powerful, and continues to be to this day. So next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend, we're actually going to have the International Passive House Open Days. We're going to have probably 20 or more projects open across the United States, but there are projects opening all around the world at the same time over the weekend. And you really get a sense of um, that kind of momentum and community.
You know,
Uh,
it's interesting, Ken, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah.
I love that you're talking about international. And as we were kind of discussing before we got on our call, I talk to people from all over the world. And I was just talking to a gentleman yesterday about his product, his building product. And one of the things that he talked about was carbon
Mhm.
and how they're measuring it and how important it is for the earth to not being able to be using these resources in passive house network and being able to design and having this collective. How important is the measurement of carbon and climate? Is that the main principle, or can you feed us a little bit more into that area of this organization?
Well, carbon emissions are incredibly important wherever they're coming from. And in terms of passive house, we're really being driven by the operational emissions, of course, and the efficiency that we can produce through the techniques and the methodology, the calculations. But certainly embodied carbon, those carbon emissions related to the manufacture, installation, maintenance, and ultimately disposal of the building components is super important too. And so a lot of programming happens that, will bring these different subjects together. Passive House itself doesn't have certification requirements around embodied carbon, but certainly embodied carbon as well as other sustainability issues are at top of mind for passive house professionals, because generally we're coming at it from a sustainability lens. So super important.
Yeah, I love that. Now, kind of jumping a little bit forward, this summer we did a story about the Icebox Challenge. Would you mind giving our audience a little understanding of what this is? And then I'd love to talk about the event that you just had in Colorado. So maybe we could tie that all together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think tie together as well. So the Icebox Challenge, which just happened in Colorado over the course of the summer in the lead up to our conference in Denver, was really produced by our chapter, Passive House Rocky Mountains, and the leaders there, who are fantastic. And Icebox Challenge is really a learning and teaching tool, a awareness building tool. And that's a big part of what we do, right, is build awareness in the public, but also are providing technical training and to professionals for certification and to be able to produce passive house buildings. So we did have two boxes, right? Those are cubes that were about 7 feet by 7 feet by 7 feet in dimension. One built to the passive house standard, the second built to the code requirements of the area. We were actually, the passive house box was offsite prefab by Be Public, which was really nice to have. And then a site built code built that we use the facilities at Build Strong Academy, Colorado, which is located in Denver, which we were really happy with their support and accommodation to be able to build it there. We started in Fort Collins at the beginning of the summer, and essentially you have the two boxes, you have windows, you have these construction types. It's hot out. You put a ton of ice in each, and you wait 2 weeks. And we had scales, actually. This isn't often done, but we had scales underneath the ice blocks so that you could actually watch the ice go down. But before you get too close, we want people to guess and see if somebody can guess what the final weights are. At the end of 2 weeks, you pull off the tops. Although you can see the ice through the windows, you get the full effect when it comes off, and it's quite dramatic. In general, the code ones were losing 30%. No, I'm sorry, 60% of the ice, and the passive house one was 30%. So twice and or more the ice melt for the code built. So you really get a sense of the power of airtightness, insulation, the thermal bridge free construction. We went from Fort Collins to Louisville, which was in the Marshall Fire area, and a number of passive house projects going on in there, and then finally to Denver and in front of Union Station, which was super exciting. It got a lot of exposure, and a lot of new people new finding out about it.
Awareness is key, right? As we say, and so is the education. And so happy to hear that B Public Prefab was actually the designer. Edie is actually a contributor on Offsite Dirt, and love that company based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and love what they are doing. And really, it's about these amazing panels that they're creating. So, Passive House is this design application and bringing awareness to, I would say Colorado is a pretty progressive state. So it's nice to see the acceptance, the awareness, and then hitting those key areas in the state really excels this energy and excels this identification with these technical guidance principles. So makes me excited to hear that. So Ken, how was the event that you had there? Was it last week or a couple of weeks ago? Tell us a little bit more
Yeah.
about the Passive House event that you guys threw.
Right. So it was our annual conference, national conference, and it's actually, we do it in this funny way. It's a hybrid event. We On September 28th, we had 15 sessions all online. And it was online only, remote, so you could be anywhere. And then a week later, on October 4th for half day, and then October 5th for all day, we were in Denver at the McNichols Civic Center building right downtown by the government center. And this wonderful old Beaux-Arts building that was a Carnegie Library and has been refashioned as an event space. They actually had an art exhibit up on the walls while we were there. So it was spectacular space. And we had about a little under 300 people online attending, and a little over 300 people attending in person. And so the in-person in Denver, we simulcast remotely too. So you didn't have to go to Denver, but it's certainly good to see people. who were able to make it. Um, it was one of the big things that we were trying to do, and kind of coming out of the pandemic, I don't know that we ever would have done it if we didn't have to deal with the pandemic. It's just to make it more accessible. And I think, especially as people are being more cautious about traveling and flying, to give people options that they could participate without necessarily getting on a plane. Um, and it's been successful, and we're kind of, it's the third time we've done it, and it finally feels like we're getting the hang of it.
Well, it's wonderful, and being able to have that content and being able to record those things, it's wonderful to have that library accessible, right? To be able to have
Yeah.
those experiences. So, Ken, what was your most favorite part of that entire week?
Wow. I mean, there were so many great sessions. It was one of the strange things too that you never know how it's going to quite go, and the sessions really exceeded expectations across the board, and we had a nice mix of highly technical stuff. You got to get into the blower door tests and the thermal bridge calculations and the refrigerants and everything, the new systems, but wider cultural things about sustainable communities and in dealing with embodied carbon, eco districts, really a wide range of interests. But I have to say the opening plenary and the closing plenaries were pretty spectacular. Um, the opening was by an architect from the UK named Jonathan Hines, who's the principal and one of the founders of this firm there called Archetype, and they are a powerhouse. They are really, it's not much of an exaggeration to say that they single-handedly drove the UK as a country towards Passive House. They just have an amazing group of people and consultants, and not just from doing technically incredible buildings, but they're beautiful buildings and public buildings, um, and working in policy. Scotland is just adopting formally Passive House in a number of ways in terms of its regulations and policies, and Archetype's work is directly related to that. So he gave his story, kind of like coming to Passive House, which the big reveal was kind of like he was always a sustainability person and doing natural building, and the big switch for him with Passive House was he was really a big believer in natural ventilation, and they were doing schools with based on natural ventilation. They thought they had it figured out, and they did the data collection, and the air quality was not good inside. The CO2 levels, the particulate levels were going way too high. And he just realized that, there's something to this controlled ventilation. and it really closed the loop with Passive House that he could uh, deliver that with Passive House. Of course, you can still use natural ventilation, as we all know, but we have the mechanical to ensure proper ventilation. And then on the other end of the conference, Timothy Locke, another architect at another incredible firm called Opal, out of Belfast, Maine, doing, gorgeous work, Passive House, mass timber, um, and bringing it to a kind of integrated level, intellectually, in that was really inspiring. Yeah. So
I
those,
love that.
yeah,
Yes, we actually got to interview him, Opal, I don't know, a couple of months ago. And that particular interview was talking about their new facility and their timber HP, their
yeah,
insulation
yeah,
product, right? That they
yep,
are
yep,
really the first one in North America to bring this together, and phenomenal organization, like you were saying, and amazing architects. And I think that's the thing that makes Passive House so beautiful, and to know that we're integrating this into commercial spaces and it's not just homes. Because when you
right,
talk about Passive House, people just thinks it's a house, right?
yeah,
But they're not
yeah,
understanding their principles for construction and design and building in other spaces.
yeah. No, you really have to work at it to get out of the house trap.
Yes, for sure.
And we really work at the conference and otherwise to really put forward non-single family home examples and pushing those forward. Next, this coming week on Thursday, we have a symposium, which is going to be a deep dive on a project that was actually in the conference. This interfit retrofit of Rubin Hall at New York University in Greenwich Village. So, it's a 100-year-old building, and bringing it up to passive house standards. So that will be a deep dive. It's, I think, I want to say it's an 18-story building, so substantial, and it's great to see folks grappling with it at that scale.
I love it. So how does somebody become a member? How do they get involved in your organization?
Yeah, so everyone is welcome to come to our website. On under the community tab, there is a section on membership, and just click on in. We have, a big thing about the network is that we want it to be accessible. We want it to be affordable, and so we really work hard to have tiers and to have pricing that is not barriers to entry. And with the same thing with the conference and pretty much everything that we do. Um, the big way, so we have chapter meetings. You don't need to be a member to join the chapter meetings. That's also under the community tab. You can come, and we have different featured topics, and it's really a way to just bring people together and start conversations regionally so people can meet new people and bring in new blood. Um, our trainings are the kind of heart of our organization. And if we were going to ask anybody to do one thing, it would be to become a certified passive house designer or consultant if you're a professional. Because that is really the core competency in terms of scaling what we need to do in terms of capacity building. And that training is live online, hybrid on demand, the exams remote. And it's really something that we've developed so that you can go at your own pace and feel comfortable with it. And yeah, and go from there.
I love it. Ken Levenson, the Executive Director of Passive House Network. We are now showing and showcasing awareness in a way to build, a way to live, a way to design. This is the future of how we are going to have better abilities to live longer. These are practices and things that you can learn and you can actually be excited about, because these are changing the way that we feel comfort in our homes and in our buildings. And how great is that to know that there are practices and principles and building applications in order to have that type of lifestyle. So
Yeah.
Ken, we're so honored. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being the executive director and leading us forward and creating these networks. And please go to the website, explore, expand your mind. If you're a professional in the industry, maybe this is something that will, inspire you a little bit better to build better. So thank you again, Ken, for being here on Offsite Dirt.
Thank you, Audrey. It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, we love expanding in high performance. We love passive house design. We love offsite construction. And one day it will all come together. And won't that be a great day? Have a
Absolutely.
great afternoon. Enjoy your day and week. And remember, you can always learn another skill set. You can always learn something new about building, and Passive House Network might be that way in. Have a great day.